Mr. Secretary, did you invite Elon Musk for a briefing on war plans with China to the Pentagon? Yes or no is simple.
There's been a lot of hyperbole and incorrect reporting around that situation, but we did invite Elon over to come talk to us generally, but there was no war plans being discussed.
Okay, so whose idea was it to invite him to the Pentagon for a briefing? You mentioned you served at the pleasure of the president. Was it the president's will to have him come and be briefed?
Today's congressional hearing featured an intense exchange between a representative from Hawaii, Jill Tokuda, and the Secretary of Defense. The questioning covered Elon Musk's access to the Pentagon, the events of January 6th, and whether the U.S. military could ever be ordered to fire on American citizens. If you want more breakdowns like this, make sure you subscribe.
As you know, at that time, Elon Musk was leading up Doge efforts, and we've taken a great investment in Doge at DoD, and so getting his input on how we make DoD more efficient makes a great deal of sense.
Okay, but don't you think it's a conflict of interest for the world's richest man? Many of the contracts that the DoD is engaged in, billions of dollars of contracts going to his company, and he is, as to your point, was leading Doge, which was involved in cutting hundreds of contracts, but also becoming intimately aware of the platforms and the requirements that would be given out for new contracts. Did you not think it was a conflict of interest to invite someone with financial interests into the Pentagon to have firsthand knowledge of what they could then bid on for their own, enrichment?
Ma'am, it was just an informal discussion, but I'll tell you, anyone that knows our Defense Department knows we show no preference to any company other than what your capabilities are, and we're grateful for the places where his companies benefit our national defense.
So for a $280 million donation, the world's richest man with companies intimately linked and involved in billion-dollar contracts with the Department of Defense gain access into the Pentagon. So would you say that any company right now that has multi-billion-dollar contracts with the Department of Defense has access to the Pentagon right now? 1-hour briefings with you personally?
On the regular basis, I meet with many people and many different companies and many different aspects of our defense industrial base to ensure we have the best possible capabilities. It would be imprudent to do
I'm sure for an investment of $280 million, Elon's investors are quite happy that it's come out into the billions. I want to jump questions right now. Mr. Secretary, on January 6, 2021, rioters and looters attacked federal law enforcement officials, vandalized and destroyed federal government property, and caused an estimated $2.7 billion in damages right here at the Capitol. Would you have sent the National Guard and the Marines in on that day?
Well, unfortunately, President Trump requested the National Guard in advance, and that was...
It took him quite a long time. I'm asking you, as Secretary of Defense, would you have sent in the National Guard and the Marines on that day? We had 140 Capitol Police officers injured. One died the next day. Would you have sent in the National Guard and the Marines?
As I said, President Trump directed National Guard to be there in advance.
And I think you can look at the record of how long it actually took for him to actually send them in. But it's good to hear that it sounds like you would have sent in the National Guard and the Marines on that day in which the insurrection was taking place right here at the Capitol. Mr. Secretary, during your confirmation hearing, you failed to deny the conclusion that you would carry out an order to shoot protesters in the legs. So let me be direct. Given what we are seeing across the country right now, would you carry out or issue an order by the president for our military to fire upon protesters actively engaging in their civil right to exercise free speech, their First Amendment rights? Would you give that order from the president?
I assume you're insinuating what's going on in Los Angeles, and I wouldn't...
Not just Los Angeles. If we take a look at protests throughout the country, it's a simple question. If directed by the president, would you order our military to fire upon protesters? Simple yes or no.
Ma'am, we have, as you know, and as this committee knows, we have standard rules of engagement that are in place that give guidance to our troops, and they abide by them.
I'm asking what you would do. Again, you said you serve at the pleasure of the president. Is that not true?
I do serve at the pleasure.
So if the president told you to shoot people in the legs, would you do so? Now, you failed to answer this question as well in your confirmation hearing when asked by members of the Senate.
Because I refuse to accept a false hypothetical that's attempting to put me in a corner and make it look like a representation.
At a time when we have more Marines and National Guard in Los Angeles than we do in Syria and Iran alone, I don't think this is a hypothetical. This is an actual situation that we are dealing with right now. So again, I will ask the question, the last 14 seconds I have, would you order our military to shoot at their fellow countrymen if ordered by the president?
I think it's interesting that for 4 years, insurrection was the left's favorite
I think we know your answer. Thank you, Mr. Chair. I yield back.
In LA, they were...
Gentlelady yields back.
The first line of questioning focused on Elon Musk. Lawmakers pressed the secretary about whether it was appropriate to invite the billionaire to the Pentagon for a briefing. The concern raised was conflict of interest. Musk's companies have billions of dollars in contracts with the Department of Defense, and he has financial stakes in new technologies tied to future procurement. The secretary defended the meeting, calling it informal and noting that the department engages with many companies. Critics argue, however, that even informal access can tilt the playing field. If you find this type of accountability reporting valuable, don't forget to subscribe. The hearing then turned to January 6th. The Congresswoman asked directly whether the Secretary would have sent the National Guard and Marines into the Capitol as violence unfolded. She pointed out that 140 Capitol Police officers were injured, and one died the following day. The Secretary referenced former President Trump's delayed order for National Guard deployment, but avoided giving a simple yes or no answer on what he would have done personally. This exchange highlights the unresolved questions of accountability and leadership during the attack. Stay tuned for more updates like this by subscribing to the channel. The most heated exchange came over the question of firing on protesters. The secretary was pressed on whether he would obey a presidential order to have troops shoot demonstrators exercising their First Amendment rights. He refused to answer directly, calling it a false hypothetical. But the Congresswoman countered that with National Guard deployments already active in major cities like Los Angeles, this was not abstract. She argued that the American people deserve clarity on whether the military would ever be used against them in this way. If you want continued coverage of these critical constitutional debates, remember to subscribe. This hearing illustrates a broader struggle in U.S. defense policy. On one hand, there is concern about the influence of powerful private companies with defense contracts. On the other, there are ongoing questions about military authority, presidential power, and the protection of civil liberties. Both issues reveal how national security decisions can have direct consequences for democracy itself. For more in-depth analysis and coverage of these debates, subscribe now so you don't miss future updates.